This is Native America Calling. I'm Shawn Spruce. Buffy Sainte-Marie is the definition of a trailblazer. As a bold songwriter and folk musician on fire in the 1960s and 70s, she told it like it was. She commented on discrimination, violence and war, politics, and Indigenous issues, and her music was even blacklisted for a short time in the US. She used the spotlight to share with the world the status of Indigenous communities and dismantle as many Native stereotypes as she could. Buffy is an Academy Award winner, a multi-Juno Award winner, and a dear friend of Big Bird and everyone else on Sesame Street. And she's still sharing her music, art, and wisdom with the world. She's inspired many of today's Indigenous musicians. The PBS series American Masters now offers a portrait of her genius and her many accomplishments. In this special pre-recorded show, we're talking with Buffy Sainte-Marie about what's new and the latest in her life. And without further ado, please let me honor and welcome our guest today, Buffy Sainte-Marie, Cree songwriter, musician, and activist. She's speaking with us from her home studio in Hawaii. Buffy, welcome back to Native America Calling. It's so great to have you on the show again.
Hey, Shawn. Hi, everybody. That was very nice words you said. Thanks.
Well, it's a script, I can't take the training wheels off quite yet, but it's just that's a really beautiful studio you have there, and I see you've got some new children's books in the background, your guitars, all your gear. So, is that where you work there every day and create and produce still?
I work here when I feel like it. That's the key to me. I do it when it's fun. I try not to turn it into work.
Well, that's definitely the attitude for sure. Well, Buffy, there's just so much to talk about. It's just so cool and exciting. But first up, this documentary that's come out, it's been produced, and it's all about your life. And tell us more about it.
Well, it was directed by Madison Thomas, who's half Indigenous, half non, and the writer is Andrea Warner. And Andrea Warner is the person who she was the second biographer who went to my manager and said that she wanted to write the story of my life. And I asked my manager, well, who is it who wants to do a biography? He said, Andrea Warner. And I said, just say yes. Because we had done a little interview, kind of like what you and I are doing today, Shawn, and neither one of us wanted to get off the phone. So Andrea is the writer, Madison Thomas is the director. And we had two production companies, White Pine, who were a major Canadian film production company, and Eagle Vision, who are an Indigenous group from Manitoba, who've been making great movies for quite a while. So I really lucked out. Had good people.
I had a chance to watch it yesterday, and I learned so much. I've always been pretty familiar with your career and followed your music, but there were just so many new insights. And I think what really struck me more than anything else, Buffy, is how long you have been in the industry, going back to the early 60s. And you've never wavered, you've never changed. And I think, nowadays, there's so many people, and they talk about decolonization, and they talk about the importance of Native culture and pride. But Buffy, you were singing and stating that message long before it was cool. I mean, you were really such a pioneer and so many years ahead of your time. And where did that strength and that courage and that vision, where do you think it comes from?
Just being interested, I think. I just really wanted to know. Like when I was a little kid, I was told two things. I was told, number one, you can't be a musician because you can't read European notation, which of course is the other side of the brain from a naturally gifted musician. And I was shunned and shamed in music classes. They told me I couldn't ever be a musician. And I'd go home and I'd play fake Tchaikovsky. And they also told me I couldn't be Indigenous because there aren't any more Indians. We have vanished or something. I was raised in Maine and Massachusetts. So I think knowing those two things as a kid let me know that sometimes the world is wrong, or adults are wrong, or the authorities are wrong. Or I think I got it quite early in my head that sometimes people aren't always correct. And I became a teacher. I went to the University of Massachusetts. I got a degree in Oriental philosophy and religion. I thought I was going to be a philosophy professor. And I also got a teaching degree, and I taught grade 1. So when I was first starting out, I went into this vacuum of Greenwich Village where, it was like preppy guys singing Michael Row the Boat Ashore and Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, you know, the American songbook folk music, Woody Guthrie songs. Bob Dylan was singing Woody Guthrie songs, you know, and Joan Baez, people like that. But I came with this whole other experience and background. And I was singing Now That the Buffalo's Gone and Universal Soldier and Codine, and songs that were really didn't come from anywhere except personal experience. And I think that I had the courage to get on a stage because I was really a nobody, just because of the content of the songs. And I really felt as though, like something like Now That the Buffalo's Gone, this is in New York City. And Now That the Buffalo's Gone is about the building of Kinzoa Dam, which is in Upper New York State. And I was singing to, you know, quite wealthy people who, you know, thought they were really woke and hip, white people mostly. And they had never heard anything. They had never heard anything about Indigenous realities. They were living in the world where Indians don't exist. And when I sang Now That the Buffalo's Gone, the attitude of audiences was, the little Indian girl must be mistaken. She must be mistaken, because there was really no, there was no such thing as indigeneity. It had never crossed their screens. Their own professors had never been educated about us. So I came as a teacher, you know, as a first grade teacher, not to scold an audience, but I think it's because I did have that. And then number one, I had a sense of fun, and I enjoyed being an entertainer. I didn't want to be a lecturer.
Well, I was gonna, I mean, how did, you know, here you were, your life seemed to follow this pretty standard trajectory of going to college and becoming a school teacher, and then boom, you just totally just threw the script out, and you take off to New York City, early 1960s, pre-beatnik era. And I mean, what was it that made you take that leap of faith and just completely just go a different direction with your life?
Well, I loved making music, and there was an opportunity in the early 60s, you know, just after the beatniks and long before the hippies. There was an opportunity for a young person right out of college to get on a stage and play my songs that I'd been writing all my life. So it's not as though I suddenly changed and turned into an entertainer. No, I just never drank the Kool-Aid that said that you can't do that. I thought it was fun. I thought it was fun. And I wasn't going for a career. You know, I wasn't raised like Paul Simon in a music business family where your uncle owns a music thing and your other uncle is a lawyer. I had never met a lawyer. I was really green, so I really didn't know any better. But like when I was growing up and being told that I couldn't be a musician, couldn't be an Indian, couldn't be this, you know, my mom said, you grow up and you go find out for yourself. And that's kind of what college was about. And when I was, maybe sophomore or junior in college, I went to Washington, D.C., and I ran into the National Indian Youth Council. Now, these guys are right up my alley, and they just loved me. It was like Mel Tom, Clyde Warrior, Walter Funmaker, Thelma Stiffarm, you know, real pioneers. Now, these were young college people like me. They were getting law degrees. Some of them were getting their masters in law. So you put my experience with their experience, and we had some things to talk about. So I had that going into the music business. I wasn't interested in being any of the other girls singers or boy singers. I mean, I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in being effective. I thought it was so exciting to be learning from my peers. By that time, I was traveling to different reservations. When I was first starting to sing, I went to, you know, I got some airplane tickets to go to places like Stockholm and Paris. When I was done with my concerts, I'd fly up and spend time with Indigenous people in the north, you know, 30 degrees north of the Arctic Circle with Sami people. Or in Australia, I'd be with Aboriginal people just because I loved it. And it was so much fun. So it kind of got reflected into my music. And it was a special time when there were coffee houses. And that's important because there's no alcohol. And young people could attend. They put an end to that pretty fast. You know, by the end of the 60s, it was no longer coffee, talk, listen, on a little pot. You know, that's the way the early 60s were. By the end, it was alcohol and hard drugs. and coffee houses had gotten liquor licenses, and the youth movement was effectively shut up. Me too, for different reasons. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, just because I was so curious myself, and I love telling other people. And I thought, if only they knew, they'd help. And in some cases, they did.
Mm. Well, you know, those early days of because you're talking about Mel Tom and Clyde Warrior, National Indian Youth Council. I mean, those were the early years of what became the American Indian movement later, and activism. I mean, that was the very beginnings, the roots of that. And I mean, did you folks face a lot of resistance? Were people like, did people push back when you went out there publicly and shared your messages through your music and through the comments that you would make? Was there pushback?
It's funny, it almost not even got to the point of being pushed back. It was all done under the table. Like being blacklisted and, you know, being under FBI surveillance. You know, I always correct people when they say, Buffy, you must hate the US government for having blacklisted your career. The US government doesn't blacklist careers. That would be legal. They would have to get an act of Congress for the government to do that. No, you have a Republican administration, a Democrat administration. They have cronies in the back room making phone calls to the network, to the media. You know, Floyd Westerman and Charlie Hill, they got this too. You know, we were never encouraged to play in Indian country much. Oh, I was real famous on the East Coast and the West Coast and the rest of the world, but not in the heartland. I wasn't invited to play through, you know, Montana, the Dakotas, you know, Oklahoma, Wyoming. I wasn't known there. We were kept quiet. Who was it who controlled the university concert series? Who was that? Wasn't us.
And we've got a caller right now. Radmilla Cody, a name many of us are familiar with. She's a Dene singer, songwriter, as well as a model, and raises awareness to fight against domestic abuse and violence. She's a Grammy nominee and multiple Native American Music Awards winner. Radmilla, thanks for calling in today.
Yate, Buffy.
Hi.
An honor. Oh, it's good to hear your voice. It's good to just be sharing this space with you over the phone, and to hear. Yeah, awesome. Good to. It's Yate. I need to. I'm trying to not get too nervous, because the last time I saw you, I was feeling the same way. I was like, oh God, Buffy Sainte-Marie.
I felt the same way, Radmilla. Radmilla, what does that mean? What is Buffy's music and her career and just everything about her mission and just her vision? What does it mean to you?
Oh man, it's not just me, but to just Native country in general. It's, you know, your work has focused so much on issues facing Indigenous peoples, and you know, the social, environmental activism linked to that, and you've just really been indeed a trailblazer for many of us who you've created and opened those opportunities in that path for. So I'm very, very grateful to you for that. I remember that the first time I met you, it was years back at the film festival in the American Indian Film Festival in San Francisco. And you had done a performance, and I believe they had given you an award there. But I was just so excited and nervous about meeting you, and then I remember saying to you, "I'm going to be just like you, Buffy." Like you. And you had a smile on your face, and you said, well, good luck, Radmilla. And I remember thinking to myself in that moment, like, well, she's right? Like, you're right about that, because there's so much that you have done in your career, and there's no, I can't be like Buffy. I can't be like you, even Whitney Houston, because I love and adored Whitney Houston. And so I think in that moment, I remember just feeling even more inspired by you, because you made me realize in that moment that I needed to focus on creating a path of my own. And so thank you for that. Thank you for that moment. And I appreciate, again, everything that you have done and continue to do for, Indigenous peoples, and just being a good relative, on so many levels in that way, and for our land, for our non-human relatives, just, for our lifeways, this goes way back, during an era where so much injustice was placed, on Black, Indigenous people and Indigenous people. And so there's a photo that I absolutely love, where you're sitting at a piano next to Muhammad Ali, and it's one of my favorite images of you. And I always wondered what that moment was like for you. What conversation took place in that moment? It was Muhammad Ali, and there were some other individuals that were there as well. But I always wondered what that moment was like for you.
It was pretty wonderful. Muhammad Ali was a friend of mine and very kind to me. He used to come to my shows and sit way in the back, and then we'd go for walks. This was in Washington, D.C. We'd go walking around at night after the show. I could say a lot about him. He's wonderful. In that picture also, if I recall, is Dick Gregory. He came to my reserve. And he told me in the airplane on the way home, he was crying, and he said that he thought that he had seen inequity, but he had never seen anything like what he saw in Saskatoon, Also in the picture was Richie Havens, David Amram, Stevie Wonder, Marlon Brando. Yeah, it's a really nice picture. It's a famous picture. Muhammad Ali and Ken Norton. The picture was taken, they had volunteered to do a 14-round exhibition bout in Washington, D.C. for the longest walk. So that's why that picture was taken. That's what it was around. And Sheldon Wolfchild and his brother, Ernie Peters, Long Walker, and members of the American Indian movement set up the longest walk, and that was the culmination. But I loved what you said. Thank you so much for mentioning that you thought that I had inspired you to walk your own way, because I wrote a song. My first album was called It's My Way, and it means it's my path, it's my dream, it's my it's what I embrace. It's my responsibility that I love, it's my way. A lot of people thought they got it confused with the Paul Anka song that Frank Sinatra sang, I'll do it my way, God damn it, my way, right? So no, it's not like that. It's an Indigenous approach, not my way. It's my way. It's my path. And I'm so glad that you got it. Thank you, Radmilla.
Radmilla, thank you for calling in today. Really appreciate your kind words for Buffy. And Buffy, it's interesting because you have the ability to just, and I read an article and they said that you were quoted as saying, I can turn any song into a peace song. I mean, the most hardcore song, doesn't matter. And like, you even recorded that theme song from The Sopranos, didn't you? And turned it into like a whole different theme.
I did, yeah. The theme song from The Sopranos, woke up this morning, got yourself a gun, right? That was written by a wonderful group of guys called Alabama 3, who are British, and there were 7 of them. I don't know why they called Alabama 3, but they wrote another song called Power in the Blood. And there have been many songs called Power in the Blood. A lot of them are Christian religious songs, but their Power in the Blood was all about swords and blood and violence. And I just loved the song. So I got in touch with them and I said, they were fans of mine, and I was at a concert in London and I had never met them, and they came in and their lead singer was walking on his knees and making a big deal out of it. So we had a lot of fun. We stayed up all night with them. My all Indigenous band from Winnipeg was with me at the time. We spent all night at their studio. And I told them I wanted to turn Power in the Blood into a peace song. They just laughed and laughed, but they loved it. I did. I turned it into, instead of saying, and when that call it comes, I will I will be ready for war. That's what Alabama 3 had said. And I said, and when that call comes, I will say, no, no, no to war. And I just kind of rearranged the lyrics a little bit. So yeah, you can do that. You can do that.
Buffy, I've also heard you lament the fact that we don't have a lot of great peace songs anymore in music. And you hear so many criticisms of pop music and nowadays that, oh, it's just so commercialized and there's no message, there's no feeling behind it. And
I don't know if that's true, though. I don't know if that's true. I mean, listen to
music.
rap and listen to hip hop and rap. I mean, you hear a lot of protests going on. And Indigenous rap and hip hop as well. So there is, it's not as though it's not there. I mean, a lot of people don't know the songs of Phil Oakes, who was a great protest songwriter, or Tom Paxton. And, you know, in the 60s, Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Judy Collins, the ones who had real powerful management, like Albert Grossman and David Geffen, you know, was Joni Mitchell's manager, everybody heard about what they were doing. But just like Indigenous music right now, not everything is being heard. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's out there that we're just not hearing yet. I mean, there's an awful lot about Indigenous life that most of the world is not hearing about. We were talking a little bit earlier about National Indian Youth Council, and in the 60s, when I was riding around in a car with Clyde Warrior and Mel Tom guys, I mean, you'd look out the window in Ponca City, Oklahoma, and you'd see, you know, house for rent, no Indians. You'd see, you know, help wanted, Indians need not apply. It was like a joke. We went to a truck stop, you know, where they serve lunch and stuff. They gave us picnic ware, you know, plastic spoons and forks. Everybody else had real stuff. So that kind of racism, you know, if you don't live in Ponca City, Oklahoma, I mean, if you're a New York City person, you probably don't know about it. So I guess what I'm saying is that in the Indigenous world, there's an awful lot going on that that is really, really good, or sometimes really, really bad, that the rest of the world, including us in other locations, are not hearing about. But, you know, with Native America Calling and ICT, and, you know, times are different now. And it's good. It's good. We're more in touch now. It's easier to be in touch and to share our information. But that's all I was doing. See, I was lucky enough to have airplane tickets, to eventually have a little bit of fame, to have a concert stage, to be on television where you can actually debate a congressman and tell him words that I can't say. Things are much better now. But I had a platform earlier than most people. So I was able to, what they taught me and what I was able to glean from them and then re-represent to a public that they couldn't reach, that's what I was trying to do. Because we'd go to AIM rallies or something else. We were trying to spotlight an issue that wasn't being heard. And, you know, so often you can't get any space in the public forum unless you're angry and have a gun. But there were so many people working in communities to make things better, and still are. You know, we always have to remember that Indian country is not what we're seeing in the global headlines.
Right. Buffy, we've got another caller, Jeremy Dutcher. He is a first composer, musicologist, performer, and activist. Jeremy, thank you for calling in.
Jeremy!
Hi, Tanse, Buffy.
Tanse! How's it?
Nice to hear your voice, my friend. And it's always an education when I get to hear your words and to know your story a little better. Thank you for sharing it today.
Thanks for calling in. Jeremy and I and a whole lot of other Indigenous artists just participated in something in Ottawa called the Star Walker concert. And there's a geo block on it, so Americans can't find it at the moment. I hope it's going to become public because, Jeremy, you just were so wonderful. Oh gosh, the way you did my songs, just beautiful. Thank you.
Share that with the world, that one, because that was such a special gathering of all these different artists that came together to honor you and your songs, and it was such a treat to be part of that gathering. I really just I don't want to take too much time. I just want to bring gratitude for you as an artistic North Star for us all. But for me personally, and I guess, you know, what I take so much from you, and your philosophies, both politically, you know, your activism, how you, musically, the way you write songs. But one thing I always really reflect on that I've heard you speak about is that music needs to be play. It needs to be about play. And I think that's something I always try to insert into any musical context I enter, is that we're here to have a nice time and explore and communicate with each other. And I feel, especially coming from the world of classical music, like a lot of musicians have lost that. And so I just want to bring gratitude for that particular philosophy that you've allowed to illuminate in my life. And I try to bring it everywhere I go, is that we're here to play. Like, let's have fun. Let's have a good time, because music is so beautiful. If I had a question, I might just want to ask you, I've also heard you talk about every 30 years in this kind of cycle, that war racket that we're kind of stuck in right now. I wonder where we are right now in that, and how we're going to get out, and how we can foster those good relations, because we're in a really critical moment, it feels like. I just want to hear you talk more. So thank you so much. I just love you. Take good
care. Okay, Jeremy. He's a wonderful artist, you know.
What's your thought on that? He mentions every 30 years and just the chaos.
It's true. It's true of Indigenous things too. Like, I feel as though right now we're kind of having a moment. You know, there are a lot of Indigenous actors and actresses and directors and all who are having a moment on television and documentaries, you know, Res Dogs, and there's a whole bunch of them. And I don't get too excited about it, because I've seen it before. I mean, it's like every now and then somebody comes out with a big Indian movie, and the fashion magazines all start sticking feathers in blonde pigtails and, you know, silliness. But then it goes away. You know, there was Cheyenne Autumn, and then there was a Little Big Man and Dances with Wolves, and, you know, there's a whole lot of them. But then it goes away. So I hope that everybody's paying attention and is going to try to maintain and not let slip back into a lack of consciousness the points that many, many people are making now about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, about residential schools, about applauding our heroes. I mean, there's so much that's going on right now, but it can sink back into obscurity. The same thing, and what Jeremy was really referring to, I think, was my comment that I wrote a song called The War Racket. It says that, you know, that's how it's done about every 30 years. The rich fill their bank accounts, the poor fill with tears, the young fill the coffins, the old hang a wreath, the politicians get photographed with their names underneath. It's like every now and then we have a big war. Money changes hand. It's a big money laundering thing. Everybody gets into it, right? A whole lot of poor people and unlucky people and unfortunate people and civilian people and guys who enlisted and maybe shouldn't have people, they get dead, you know, but a whole lot of people get rich. And then, oh, this is the war that will put an end to all wars. They said that about World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. There's not going to be another war. Well, war makes a whole lot of money for a whole lot of people. And so we seem to go, Jeremy was saying, you know, he was reflecting, we seem to go forward, and then they pretend that it's over. And then after a while, here it comes again, the same old thing. And all I know about, I mean, I have no great wisdom of how to make it stop. You know, people will sometimes say something that I object to. They say, oh, Buffy, you're such a warrior for peace. And I'm not. I know what a warrior is. You know, I have respect for our veterans and our real soldiers, but I am not a warrior. Excuse me. I'm a girl with a guitar, right? I'm a writer. I'm an artist. I'm not a warrior.
We're talking with Buffy Sainte-Marie today. She's a Cree singer, songwriter, activist, and artist. She's joining us from her home in Hawaii. We're not taking callers this hour, but you can still join our online discussion. How has Buffy's music influenced you? what's your favorite Buffy Sainte-Marie song? We're on Facebook and Instagram at Native America Calling. We're also on Twitter at 1-800-99-Native. And we've got a caller right now. Jer, he is a singer from Coche de Pueblo, lead singer for the Jer Project band, and founder of the Native Guitars Tour. Hello, Jer. Thank you for joining us.
Let's see, Hopa. Hi. How you doing? How's everybody doing out there?
Good.
Great, Jer. We're doing great. Isn't it great to have Buffy on the show today?
Yes, yes, and it's such an honor to be, on the airwaves and the same vibrations as Buffy. She's been such a inspiration, mentor, teacher, matriarch. It's a great moment right now for me.
Thank you. Jer.
Jer, how has Buffy's music inspired your career?
Wow, I think it's kind of ironic. I'm in the studio right now recording some new songs, and the tracks I'm working on
Nope, I think we lost.
was Buffy Sainte-Marie on TV, and just that voice, and always correcting the narrative of what was happening, always educating not just our inner nations, but the world on the correct narrative of who we are as Native people. So as I put music together, it inspires me, and it's giving me that, open that door for me to just explore that with pride, and continue that to educate people of what the correct narrative is. So yeah, just so many ways that Buffy has inspired our people and just the world, with her messages and with her songs, and just that voice, there's that vibrato in her voice, that strength that our matriarchs have. So that's a short little a bit of inspiration that continuing on through some writing.
Jared, thanks for joining us today, calling in with those warm words for Buffy. And Buffy, before break, I said I want to talk about my favorite one of your songs ever, "Darling, Don't Cry." My favorite Buffy Sainte-Marie song. Tell me the story behind it.
Oh, well, I must begin by saying that song really started with Edmund Bull and his mother. That was their song. They're from Little Pine in Saskatchewan. And Edmund Bull is the lead singer for the world champion round dance group Red Bull. And they are very, very much loved drum group. And so I loved their song, "Darling, Don't Cry When I Leave the USA. If you like, I'll take you home when I go back to Canada. Hey, hey, I go." Yeah, it was so nice. And so I just had this song of my own going through my head, and it just kind of worked together. So I got in touch with Edmund, who I already knew, and I said, yeah, can we turn this into a song? And I explained a little bit about publishing to him, because it's always bothered me that, after we started the Music of Aboriginal Canada category for the Junos, which is like the Grammys in Canada, all these guys from Toronto show up with their recording equipment along some powwow group saying, how would you like to make a cassette? Or a little bit later, a CD. Oh my God, we're going to be stars, right? And then these businessmen just take the publishing, and you never hear from them again. So "Darling, Don't Cry" is a co-write between me and Edmund Bull. And it's just about, I travel a lot, and I go to European countries. I had an all Aboriginal band for a while, and we'd go someplace like in Europe or Australia somewhere where they had never been to a powwow. And "Darling, Don't Cry" is just so, it's the real deal, and people all over the world, they get this phoning combination of stuff that they associate with Indians, and it's not even true, and it's shallow, and it's not really real or about anybody. It's just kind of a Hollywood package. But darling, don't cry. And I really wanted to give at least my listeners the opportunity to hear the real deal. So Red Bull, sing on it with me. And and there's a video. You can find the video at my website. And you can see Red Bull, they're singing in the video, in parts of the video. So
Okay.
yeah, people like it. I like it too.
Yeah, no, it is just an all-time classic. And Buffy, I mean, one thing we can't not forget to talk about today is you're, in addition to being this songwriter and singer and activist, you're also a writer. And you've got a couple of books behind you right now, a children's book and some other books. So tell us more.
Oh, well, my first kids book, I based on a song that I used to sing to my pets when I'd bring them back from the shelter. It's called Hey, Hey, Little Rockabye, and it's about pet adoption. And then this one is a full-length chapter book for kids, and it's called Topway and the Magic Hat, and it's about a little kid who goes to spend the summer with relatives on a reserve across the valley. And, you know, of course, he gets to sleep in a teepee and go to a powwow. But basically what he gets into trouble with, you know, kind of bad company and bad heroes. So it's about being betrayed and self-betrayal and how you come back from that. So it's about peer pressure and bullying and things like that, but it's all wrapped into a little Riz story. And then this one just made the New York Times top 10 list for children's books. And it's called Still This Love Goes On, and my words, and Julie Flett, who's half Indigenous, she did the illustrations for this. So it's really beautiful. It's a wonderful book. You know, I don't have time to show you the whole thing, but it really captures the isolation, but also the majesty of life on a remote reserve, you know, missing your relatives and coming home. So that one's called Still This Love Goes On. So I got 3 kids' books out right now.
Now, Buffy, the pet adoption, that's an issue that's very close to your heart. And I even played, you have a song that's related to that. I think we played it during the break. Tell us more.
Well, that's what this little book is based on. And in the back of the book, if you can read music, which I cannot, but music teachers will be able to read it. So this Hey Little Rockabye is based on this song that I used to sing my pets when I would bring them home, and we also turned it into a book. It almost feels like me, you know, as an adopted person. Yeah, I'm adopted, so I kind of relate to my pets when I bring them into my life. And at one point, this song says, "Were you? Let's see. You didn't get no choice and you didn't get no vote when they dropped you off at the shelter. All you had was your little fur coat, and now you get somebody loves you. Hey, hey, little rockabye. Hey, hey, little darling." I guess we all feel like that, you know. All we have is the skin we're in sometimes.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Me and my daughter, we just became foster parents for a cat at our local society. So we're taking care of a cat. We're helping it. It has a respiratory tract infection, so we've got it for 2 weeks to get back somewhere. So I can really appreciate all your passion for animals.
I do. I love them, and thank you for doing that.
You just never stop. Do you still tour frequently?
I'm trying not to, because I got stuck in that awful mess. I was abandoned by 2 airlines and dumped in Denver airport. I mean, it was a nightmare for 3 days. It was crazy. Yeah, no, the airlines have broken right now, so I'm trying not to travel. They're trying to get me to go in November, December to this big thing happening in Canada, and I might go or I might not, but I'm trying not to fly right now. There's just too much that can go wrong. I'm trying to stay home, which I love.
In Hawaii, do you have a lot of friends there in Hawaii that you hang out with? And just tell me a little bit about just your daily life there living on the islands.
No, I don't have a lot of friends. I only have a few friends. You know, being an entertainer on the road, you know, I'm not here all the time. You know, I can't, you know, go over the house on Thursday nights and then you come over our house on Thursday nights. It's not my kind of life, you know. And I've never worked in an office, so I don't have that kind of weekday. Then there's the weekends, you know, I'm always gone. So no, I don't have a lot of friends here. I've had up to 33 goats and a horse at the same time, and 2 dogs and 2 cats. And right now I have 2 kitties, 1 goat, and my sweetheart, and a whole lot of wild pigs and chickens and parrots and and songbirds everywhere. So yeah, I get a lot of animals. And I think it's partly what keeps me healthy and wanting to live another day. I really love living, and I'm very curious about life. And I really think that the time that you sit your butt down on the actual ground, that you interact in the forest among green things, you know, and that you actually interact with other species from yourself, I just think it is so enriching. It just keeps me alive. I also work out and eat real good.
Oh, good. And your son, Cody, he's your neighbor. Is that right?
Yep, he lives in my back 40 in his own house, and he's online a lot. Yeah, he makes his own music, and but we don't play together. We play separately.
Uh-huh. Well, speaking of your music, I mean, your career, it spanned decades. And how do you think you've evolved as a singer and as a songwriter over the years? What's different about the music that Buffy Sainte-Marie records and performs today as opposed to, you know, in the 70s or even the 60s?
Well, mostly, well, now I'm in charge. I mean, in the 60s, you walked in and, you know, you were singing in a big room with a bunch of strange men that you never saw before, that you'll never see again, and they're totally in charge of the way the record comes out. So it's apt to be anything. And I really thought my albums could have been a lot better, and could have been more effective. So over the years, you know, I got into electronic music and computers real early. So, and I started recording soundtracks for movies using computers and you know, Fairlight, Synclavier, and eventually Macintoshes. So really what it does, it gives you the control of making things come out the way that you intend. And you can work on them forever. There's not, you know, a clock and a bank involved. And mostly you get to call the shots. And that's why Power in the Blood is so good. You know, Power in the Blood is a good album. And, you know, when you're in control of yourself, it comes out the way that you want it. It might not sell a gazillion, but it's the way you wanted it, and it's sure worth doing as an artist.
We hear so much about musical styles, and I, you know, it's like reviewers and experts always trying to kind of pigeonhole artists into these categories. And if you were to describe your style, is it as simple as saying it's folk or it's indigenous? How would you describe your own music, Buffy?
No, I'm a songwriter, and it's really diverse. You know, when you go to sleep at night, you don't know if you're going to dream, let alone what you're going to dream about. Be anything. You could be dreaming about Venus and Mars, or China and Tibet, or, you know, you can be dreaming about anything. And that's the way songs are for me. So I've had hits as country songs. You know, Kanye West and Young Thugs have recorded my songs. I have Until It's Time for You to Go has been recorded 157 times by just about any artist you can think about. And I write a lot of songs that are purely indigenous, and some that are really strong, very well thought out about the entire world, like Universal Soldier, you know, where it's really made to make sense, common sense. So I haven't really changed much, except that I have my own studio for quite a long time. So that's why my later records are a little bit better than the earlier ones that did get a lot of attention, but I always thought could have been better.
Well, you had this vision from a young age, and you carried it through. You went all the way as far as you can go. And I think that we have so many young Indigenous people that are listening on air now, or they hear your songs, or they watch you on movies and documentaries and television. And how do you instill that? How do we transfer that energy and that passion that you have to our younger Native people today?
Oh, I think we're doing it. I think I've been doing it all along in my life, from either songwriting or Sesame Street or activism or something. But there are people in every community who are doing, you know, their own thing in their own way. And that's what I do. I just do my own thing in my own way. And I didn't drink the Kool-Aid that the colonials were trying to bathe us in, you know. I just never drank that. I just never believed. I mean, my mom, when I was a kid, she told me not to believe in like the Indian movies that we were seeing. She made me aware that there's a whole crock out there that is just kind of in one ear and out the other. And then there's the reality that you can find out about. Like, I don't think I would love to talk to young people about how it was. You know, we mentioned the National Indian Youth Council. And when I would ride around with them, all of those signs that we were, you know, all those racist things, that we have to appreciate the fact that our people have already done a whole lot to make things better. And it wasn't just celebrities like me that you see on Sesame Street. It was everybody else, you know, who were informing me and I was informing them. And, you know, we all do our part. But for me, it's always based in the fact that I just plain want to. If you don't want to, don't worry about it. Do something else. But if you do want to, there's a lot of Indigenous people who came before us. You know, this is not new. This resistance has been very, very necessary and carried on for 500 years. If we had a very long time to talk, you know, I'd fill you in on some real hair-raising things that are still going on and that go way, way back. But, you know, there's only so much column space. There's only so much time, but there's a lot of information out there. And if you love to learn, then go get it and turn it into whatever it is that will address the issue for the people that you are reaching. And they're all different.
That is so true. There's only so much time. And unfortunately, our time with Buffy Sainte-Marie is winding down. And Buffy, I'm glad you mentioned Sesame Street, because that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. But unfortunately, we just don't have enough time to talk about so many things that you have going on, so much in your career. And I feel like you're just getting started in so many ways with just so many new projects and just so much innovation. And again, it's just been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much. Buffy Sainte-Marie, the legend, the icon here on Native America Calling. She's joined us today from Hawaii. Just a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Folks, I want to wish you all well, and I hope you enjoyed this show. We do have to sign off now. This is Shawn Spruce with Native America Calling. And again, big thanks to Buffy Sainte-Marie.
Thanks, Shawn.